You're listening to the Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Let's talk some Jets right here on the Jake Asman Show as the Jets are sitting there with the second overall pick. They've been rumored to try and go after Deshaun Watson. There, of course, is the Sam Darnold conversation. What do they do with Sam? Do they stick with him and trade the second overall pick? Are they trading Sam? The Jets might be one of the most fascinating teams we follow all offseason long. And to talk more Jets, we go out to the Progressive Guest Line right now, and we bring on Robby Sabo from JetsXFactor.com. He does a great job covering the team. Robby, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for coming on the show.
Jake, my friend, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my friend. So let me start with the big question involving the Jets. What do you think they should do with Sam Darnold?
Well, personally, they got to trade him. I mean, knowing who Joe Douglas is as a general manager, track his background. He learned under Ozzie Newsome, value-driven. He saw them win a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. They built that team while Joe Flacco was on the rookie deal. Yes, it was his fifth year, but still, they built that team while he was on his rookie deal. Then Philly, same thing, Carson Wentz. Yes, Foles took over, but Foles ate up such a small percentage of the salary cap. So Douglas, knowing who Douglas is, value-driven manager, get that rookie contract, build the team around him. It's got to be Zach Wilson. You've got to trade Darnold. I kind of break it down like this. If you're Douglas, if you roll with Darnold and he puts up 24 touchdowns, 15 picks in 15 games next year, what do? Do you offer him a multi-year deal? That's the question. It's about odds, and having Zach Wilson 4 years, around $8 million, as opposed to Darnold on 1 year, it's a tough deal.
I agree with you, but I will ask you this question because there's plenty of Jet fans that say you got to stick with Sam. He's had no help. You got to build around him. He could still be the guy. What do you say to those Jet fans that want the Jets to trade the second pick and then use all those extra resources to finally surround Sam Darnold with some talent?
I mean, listen, I think Sam Darnold's been nothing but class since he got here. I think he can have success in the NFL. Which quarterback can't? We saw Goff have success. It's more, but what we have to realize, it's more of a stat game. It's more of the way the rules are being played today. What Douglas needs to do, what his job is to find the next Mahomes, not find the next guy that could have some success but not sustain it. What I ask those Jets fans is this: in the early 90s, when you had fewer quarterbacks putting up big numbers, would Sam Darnold or Kenny be in a class with the Elways, the Marinos, the Kellys, the Moons? And I just don't think that's the case. Douglas his job is to find the next Mahomes. And Wilson offers just much more of an upside in that regard.
That's the biggest thing with Sam Darnold, right? I mean, if his upside is that, he could be Ryan Tannehill or Alex Smith, yeah, that's nice, but you're never going to win anything of significance with those guys. You maybe go to the playoffs a couple of years, and that's really it. So what do you believe the upside is for Sam? Do you think it's around those guys? Is it less than that? Do you see the argument that he could still be a top 10? How do you view the ceiling for Sam Darnold?
I see it like I said, Goff. I see it in that kind of light. I see him in the middle class, maybe a little bit below average class, where it's system dependent, it's coach dependent, it's personnel dependent. He could put up a good season or 2 or 3. He could put up terrible seasons. I mean, listen, Baker Mayfield, he's dealt with what at head coach over the first few years? Hugh Jackson, Freddie Kitchens, Greg Williams. Yes, Adam Gase is a reason to believe in Sam Darnold. There's no question. But at the same time, two things could be true at once. Darnold could have played lousy. I mean, with Darnold, he has all the physical traits. We know this. The problem is his mechanics. The problem is between the ear stuff. Locking on a reads post-snap. Not being able to see beyond the one-on-one coverage. Not being able to see his intended target. He often doesn't have a big radius around that target where he misses guys. So I think that's the most discouraging sign. The in between the ear stuff, it's really tough to fix that. So I think Darnold could have success. Don't get me wrong. And he's been a perfect guy, perfect kid since he arrived. But considering you could still get a second-round pick, and that's another thing. Tip your cap to Douglas and the Jets. This is a kid who threw 9 touchdowns, 11 picks. And some reporters, some sources are talking late first-round pick. I mean, I know it's a quarterback league, but still, for the Jets to be put in that situation is pretty remarkable. And the fact that nobody knows what the Jets are going to do is another remarkable turnaround. I mean, the leaks coming out of the building pre-Douglas were legendary. And now nobody knows, which is a great thing for the Jets.
Robby Sabo joining us here. He's the co-founder of JetsXFactor.com. If you're a Jet fan listening to this, check it out. Really, really good site if you are into really all the, the inner details of the team besides the obvious stuff with quarterback and head coach. They really do a great job covering the entire team and getting into the intricacies of the offseason. Let's continue with the quarterback conversation, Robby, because, of course, if they trade Sam Darnold, we'll get to Deshaun Watson in a moment, but it seems like the consensus from most is that Zach Wilson would be the quarterback to take. Give me your thoughts on Zach Wilson and how you think he compares to the other quarterbacks that could be available in the draft for the Jets.
I really love Wilson. He's that new age guy, and I think maybe perhaps a tiny bit overhyped, but that's because of the Burrow factor last year. Burrow coming out of nowhere, Wilson the same thing. What separates Wilson and Fields, in my mind, is accuracy, leverage, and throwing guys open. There's just that slight difference between Fields and Wilson in terms of, Fields kind of waits for guys to come open sometimes, and it's an RPO system. You kind of can't tell how it's going to translate to the NFL, and there's some concerns with me about Lawrence in that regard too. But Lawrence, I'd still go number one. Wilson, he could make all the throws. The only concern is that small frame. I know people are kind of brushing it off. Hey, it's not a big deal. Look at Breeze. It's still a big deal to me. I know the NFL is a lot softer than it used to be. Quarterbacks could have a picnic in the pocket sometimes, but you gotta worry about that a little bit. But in terms of Wilson versus Fields, Wilson anticipates, he reads leverage, he throws guys open a bit more than Fields. Not saying that Fields can't do that. I like Fields, but that's the nod. That's the area I give the nod to Wilson.
Do you think Fields could still be the guy at 2, though? Like, do you think the Jets are going to end up being sold on Wilson, or do you think there's a chance they end up really liking Fields and they'd be willing to take him with that second pick?
I think anything's a possibility with Douglas, and that's a good thing. I even think Trey Lance is a possibility because knowing Douglas and how he loves value, possibly trading down and snagging Lance is something that, while I don't think it's likely to happen, I think it's a topic that deserves more attention. Lance reminds me of Wentz a lot, and Douglas was in Philly when they grabbed Wentz, and it worked out to a tune of a championship. So I think all three are possibilities, but if I had to, hedge my bets, it would be the BYU kid.
Robby Sabo joining us here, co-founder of JetsXFactor.com. All right, Robby, I'm based here in Houston. I have the Texans' perspective on the side of things, and of course, we all know the Jets would love themselves some Deshaun Watson. What's your take on the Watson factor here? Do you think Joe Douglas would be ultra aggressive in trying to acquire Deshaun if the Texans were willing to make him available?
Aggressive, yes. Aggressive in conversation, yes. Not aggressive with assets. I don't think he'd go overboard. I think he'd only make the trade if it suits them, if it's the number 2 and tops another 2 first-round picks. I don't think he'd ever go to 4 first-round picks. I just don't think that's the way he's built. He constantly preaches culture. He constantly preaches the draft, building through the draft. His last press conference, he specifically talked about the draft over and over again. And that's how NFL teams are built. The hard salary cap sets it up that way. It's not the NBA. You can't build through free agency. Free agency has to be viewed as the icing on top of the cake. And Douglas understands this. He'll take the long road. So Watson, while he'd love to have Watson, who wouldn't? He has a line in the sand he won't cross. And I think that's the number 2, and two other first-round picks.
If it took, let's say, 3 ones and a bunch of other picks, do you think the Jets would do it if it meant keeping him away from the Miami Dolphins?
That's a good question. I think he'd go a little more in on the ante, but not if it disrupted what he's trying to build long term. And I think he values those picks so incredibly much that, yes, it would annoy him to see Watson go to the Dolphins, but he has his own plan. And if you take care of your business in-house and you trust the process, I mean, Philly, Sixers, and you understand what you're trying to do, then no, you'll let him go.
See, that to me is the biggest factor in all this, Robbie. It's like, you don't want to give up, everything to get Deshaun, but you also can't allow him to go to the Dolphins either. And he's 25 years old. He's your answer for the next decade plus at the position. I'd do it if it meant 3 ones. Plus, I continue to argue to people here in Houston, the Jets are dealing from a position of strength. There's not a single team that can offer the Texans a clean break at quarterback like the second overall pick the Jets have would provide for Deshaun. So I'd be all in, and I think Douglas would do it, especially if it meant keeping him away from the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, no, I think you could be right. But you're right. You said it. You hit on it. The Jets are in the perfect spot. Yeah, Miami has the assets too, but the Jets have that number 2. And that number 2's value, I actually think it's being underrated at the moment.
Agreed.
It is so much more valuable than everyone is talking about right now.
Agreed, especially if the Zach Wilson hype continues to be what it is. Robby Sabo joining us here, talking all things Jets with him. Let's talk about free agency. The Jets have the second most cap space in the NFL. If you were Joe Douglas, Robbie, how would you try and spend it to improve this team?
Trenches. Joe Thuney has to be the number 1 target. Monday, they should send a team out to wherever Thuney is and, bring gifts, because Thuney has got to be the guy. We know he was in on him last year. We know what the Pats did. Thuney's the guy, followed closely by Lindsley. And, sprinkle in a couple of the Niners guys. Kyle Juszczyk is very appealing to me because, depending on what LaFleur does, he might run a lot of 11 personnel, but he'll still run a lot of 12 personnel, defecting from the Shanahan system. So Juszczyk is very intriguing. And Curtis Samuel is the other guy. At wideout, everyone was in on Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson was in on the Jets. He was playing that social media game. Yes, the Jets need an outside weapon, but when you think about today's NFL, think about the Chiefs. Think about Tyreek Hill. Think about guys who could assume jet motion duties. The Jets haven't had a true, I call them X factor. A lot of guys will call them gadget players. I think it's a disservice to say gadget. They haven't had a true guy who at receiver who could take the ball on a handoff, assume jet sweep motions. As good as Crowder is downfield and in the slot, he's not that guy. So I think Curtis Samuel is number 2 behind Thuney. And then number 3, Carl Lawson at edge. They need an edge guy in the worst way. Grab one edge in free agency, grab one in the draft, do whatever you have to do. It's been a decade and a half since John Abraham, since they had a legit edge pass rusher. So Thuney, Samuel, and an edge.
All right, Robbie, 30 seconds left with you here. Who is the Jets' Week 1 starting quarterback in 2021?
Zach Wilson. It just makes sense.
Mormon Mahomes, Robbie. Can you promise me he'll be Mormon Mahomes?
Well, at first I think he was called Mormon Manziel, so that works a lot better. Mormon Mahomes. Yeah, Joe Douglas is a value-driven guy. He won't turn away that rookie deal.
He's Robby Sabo, Jets X Factor writer. Jet fans, make sure you check out jetsxfactor.com. Great site to get into everything going on with the team. Robbie, appreciate you coming on. Thanks a ton for covering, by the way, that Brandon Marshall interview from last week. We'll get you on again soon as we move through the free agent process here.
All right. Take care, Jake.
Robby Sabo joining us there, Jets X Factor writer. Thanks to everyone who has tuned in on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to my page there. We will take a quick break here on the radio show. Come right back, wrap up hour 1 of our 2-hour program here on a Thursday morning on Sports Map Radio.